Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you're ready to take on your next paying clients, I have good news. My free 4 Basics of Client Attraction and How to Stand Out class is live at haileyrowe.com/client-attraction. In the class, you're going to learn the top 2 traits I recommend for most coaches and entrepreneurs if they really want to turn this into a career. You're going to learn how you can build demand for your services and stop getting crickets on your posts. You're going to learn the sales roadmap I used to improve my sales conversion rate and help my clients do the same. And you're going to learn so much more. So go to haileyrowe.com/client-attraction and get your copy of the class today. Hey, I'm here today with Kris Ward, and Kris is an expert in all things delegating, managing a team, time management, and she even has a book called Win the Hour, Win the Day. And we're going to be talking today about how do you stay organized as an entrepreneur? How do you know your way of being organized? Because Kris says we have entrepreneur personality types, and how do you beat the overwhelm? So Kris, why don't you just introduce who you are, what you do, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Thank you, Hailey, for having me here. All right. So what I do is I really create a movement where your business supports your life instead of consuming it, because business should be fun. And we've all heard, the beating drum of, listen, I'm just going to work hard. Once I get past this next thing, things will be different. And clearly by now, a lot of the people I work with in the winner circle, when they've been in business 5-10 years, they're like, I thought I would be further along at this point in my journey. So I thought they wouldn't be working so hard so many hours. So in working with the hundreds of entrepreneurs that I have served, what I would say is we noticed that they fell into one of 5 power personalities, and each has its strength, its superpower. It also has, for every strength, there's a weakness. It also has a little bit of kryptonite. So I thought it would be really fun, it's really fun to discuss it with you, but what people are telling me all the time when they take the quiz, it's like a 30-second quiz and very customized results you get. Is they're like, oh my gosh, you get me, you're right in my head. And they find it to be very empowering. So yeah, we're having some fun with that. Oh, I think you're on mute. Hi, Hailey.
I was on mute. You're so right. Thank you for letting me know. So I said, super cool. And I want to know more about these different types. So tell me more about what should we know about these types and how they work?
Well, so what happens is we have a number of different types. So you could be, focus-itis is one, a sufferpreneur, a rushaholic, a perfectionizer, jugglerama. They're just fascinating. And sometimes you'll find a little bit of your personality in each one, but you're going to have one predominant. So for me, I'm what I call a recovering rushaholic. And I thought for many years, my superpower was my speed. I got a lot done in a day. I moved really quickly. I was just like, I thought I was guns a-blazing and that this was my biggest strength. What I didn't realize with that was that I was skimming over things, wasn't getting real depth or traction to stuff I was doing. Everything was at surface level because I was always in this rush, it was just go, 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 get stuff done, but to what depth? And it also limited my creativity because you can't be on an adrenaline high and then be in Zen and open your mind to creativity. So often what you lean into, you think, oh, this is it. This is what I'm really good at. And that's great, but there's limitation with that as well.
Yes, definitely. I could definitely see how you'd have a little bit of each, but we all have that dominant one we fall back on. And when we are entrepreneurs, staying organized with all of our different thoughts, all of our different ideas, all our different hats that we wear, as far as I'm the marketing person and I'm the coach and I'm the client delivery person and customer service rep and the tech person. So what are some ways we can stay more organized? And aside from just, making a to-do list, categorizing what's most important, what's not, maybe some other ideas for how we can stay more organized.
Yeah, so it's interesting. That's a bit of I'm going to give a little bit of a pushback on that. When I started doing this work, really people tend to have the idea that, oh, you know what, you're organized and blah, blah, blah. And that's your strength. And what I would say is being organized has its limitations. So I actually don't really use that word very often, because I know for someone that I am an organized person, but that restricted me as well. And that is, when you dive deeper and take the quiz, you'll find out different personality limitations again. And for me, what would happen is I would reorganize things, right? It's like, oh, okay, let me make another list of my lists and get organized. And, I would get a high on being organized. Oh, and by the way, Hailey, let's color code these things too, right? So I'll full disclosure, when I was in school, especially like, something boring or whatever in grade or middle school, and my books had I would have a title, and I used a ruler, and I used a red pen. I always underlined with red pen, double thank you much. And I would do all these things. My books are really organized, but they lacked content. Okay. So being organized, what happens often is you just reorganize yourself. So that actually can be a deficit and stifling. So when we're working with our clients in the Winner Circle, and when you take your personality quiz and find out your power personality, what I would say is, depending on that personality, whether you're a jugglerama and you just you think your key strength is multitasking and you're running around and doing all these things, it's not about being organized. It's about putting things in play that support your strength, like super toolkits, which are what my clients say in the Winner Circle, systems and processes on steroids. Because we could really spend this whole time here, but I'll make it short, Hailey, on to-do lists are really just percolating lists of emergencies. And you nailed it really well. You're like, okay, so we get the to-do list, we reorganize the to-do list, we do all these things with the to-do list, but you're just reprocessing that. And what I would say in short is that to-do lists don't have increments of time. They're not in chronological order. There's just a whole bunch of problems with that. And there's a Zeigarnik effect with how your brain deals with it, which is really that sounds fancy, but it means getting up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and on the way to there, you remember something you forgot. Right? So really it's having things in play to support your strengths instead of trying to be organized. That's the big key.
Gotcha. Oh, I like that. Yeah, I do agree that sometimes people spend so much time organizing and planning that they never actually get to the real work that produces the results, right? It's this prep mode that never ends up being implemented to what you need to actually do. So when you say working with our strengths, what could be some examples? Maybe you could give us an example of, let's pretend that somebody has a strength of, they are very organized, but what would be an example of how they could use their skills?
Yeah. So, okay. So again, let's look at, let's say you're a perfectionizer. Okay. So a perfectionizer is someone that, fusses with it, and they really just wanted to make it look so, and they really say, oh my gosh, you know what, when I put this out to the marketplace, I want to look professional. I want them to know I care about this. I really want this just so. And so you're right. That's a beautiful word to use, the prep mode. They get stuck in the prep mode, and it's really can be quite seductive, and you can justify, I am trying to do my best, and I am trying to make sure that everyone knows I care and I'm committed. And we've all got caught on that a little bit, here and there. And what I would say to that is, the most successful companies in the world that make the most amount of money, software companies, we've all hit the wave of ChatGPT in the last 6 months. They put out a flawed product, or a product that they know needs some work. And they say, here's what we're working on, use it. And when we get your feedback, we will improve upon it, right? So you can organize yourself and get everything all wonderful, but somebody else is going to beat you to the marketplace. And they talk about this in Scrum, Jeff Sutherland's book, doing double the work in half the time. And he gives numerous examples in that book where he's talking about really large companies that had projects are worth millions of dollars, and they met with the client, they worked really hard. And what happened was, by the time they got the product to the marketplace, the needs of the client had changed, right? So it's like, oh, well, yeah, we meant that when we did this, but now we're using this and this is evolving and stuff. So what I would say is, being organized is great, but what we want to do is be organized to move quickly, fail fast, and just, be ready to reorganize and pivot really quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Love that. Yeah, but while you're waiting and perfecting the product, the needs of the market are already changing. So if you get something out there imperfectly and you're able to adapt it with the live feedback you're getting, I think that's a very good point. What about overwhelm? Because I know all personality types probably deal with some form of overwhelm, whether it's I have too much to do, there's never enough time, I don't know where to start, this is frustrating. What would you say about overwhelm and how you manage that and how you manage that with your clients?
Yeah, so I think, again, overwhelm really is a symptom of, have you ever done this on a Saturday? You go into a room that needs some cleaning, and then you're like, okay, this is it. This is the day. And all of a sudden, maybe you went in to make the bed or something, and you look at the closet and say, enough. And you pull it all out. And now all of a sudden, in a short period of time, you have this hot mess. And you're like, you know what? I think I need to move, right? Like, I have created all kinds of chaos here. And you're just overwhelmed by so much coming at you. And you might, if you took a calm moment, say, all right, you know what, if I really just slow down and take this hot mess in the closet and spread it out and say, you know what, really all I have here is laundry. And if I divide it up, all of a sudden I have some darks and some whites. It's not the big, hot, consuming mess that I thought it was. So overwhelm really comes from lack of direction and really trying to do everything all at once. Overwhelm is trying to have your hands in too many pots at the same time. And so I would say leaning into your calendar, which I would argue that about 95% of entrepreneurs do not know how to use their calendar. And here's a quick example. Hailey, I'm not sure if you've heard this, but lots of times I'll say to people something, they'll put stuff outside, appointments on their calendar. Like, Hailey, you'll have me on your calendar. Oh, I'm meeting with Kris. But a lot of times people won't put their work on their calendar, and they'll say, well, no, I know I have to do that. I have to do that every Friday, or I know I have to prep for my videos on Monday. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, you can never reassign that or get help with it because you can't move it around. It's all in your head, which is a dangerous spot. But more than anything, what's really dangerous, where the overwhelm comes from, is you're walking into the workday. You might think you have 7 hours, but you may only have 4. And so you're set up to fail. The math is bad to get go. And then you're like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. I'm trying to do all these things at once. And it's just simple, basic math.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one thing that's helped me with that is time batching and learning time batching and timing myself to know how long things do actually take me. Like, I know I could think writing a piece of content takes me 20 minutes, but I've timed myself before. And then I see it's taken me 47 minutes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought this was going to be quick and easy. And here I am. So it helps you more realistically say, okay, either I'm going to set the deadline, whatever I have at 20 minutes is what has to go out, or make more time for it and more realistically batch your day. But what about people who say, well, that sounds cool, Kris, but, and I like your idea of like, maybe being more realistic with the math of your day and how long things will take you. But that feels really not spontaneous. And that just kind of kills my vibe. And that makes me feel pressure. So what would you say to those people?
Yeah, you brought up some really good things. Let me back up for a second, though. Your batch work is so powerful because batch work really is about being efficient. And we do this when we, if you're lucky, sometimes we don't. You may be cooking for yourself or your family. You're going to make one meal. Now, I've had situations where my sister calls and says, okay, I'm now a strict vegan and the kids only eat chicken McNuggets. And then somebody else at the table is a meat eater. And I have foolishly done these meals where I'm cooking for somebody coming over in their family and we're really having like a restaurant, 4 meals at one time. It makes more dishes. It takes longer time. Something always gets burnt or dropped. It's chaos, right? So batch work, you really touch on something totally important there too, is that, you know what, if I'm meeting with you today, Hailey, that maybe I'm shooting videos this morning because I'm in the producing, communicating sort of brain vibe there. So, and then my interviews would be in the afternoon. I'm not going to try to write some powerful deep content in between doing interviews. It just doesn't work. So batch work really does make such a difference. And I would also talk about when you put that stuff on your calendar and then you say, hey, I allotted an hour for this, and then all of a sudden maybe it took an hour and a half. Well, then it's not even about timing it and writing that down, and that all sounds very academic, but it's about then on the calendar, you have to move that and say, okay, that took more time. Then you can clearly move what you didn't have time for. So here's a quick example. I had a couple weeks ago an issue with my phone. I called Apple. It was supposed to take 15 minutes. Guess what? Spoiler alert, it took an hour, okay? I know you're all shocked. So the old me back in the day, what I would have done is slap that into hyperdrive, and the rest of the day I would have been rushing and stressed, and the people who had to deal with me, like my team, would have been like, oh my gosh, it sounded impatient, but I'm just trying to make up for lost time, because I was always trying to race time. But because I had everything on my calendar, I could look and say, okay, I lost an hour. Let's look at this day. What can be moved to tomorrow, or can one of those things even be moved to next week? So I was able to say, because I could see it all there, and I wasn't now just trying to remember things I had to do in a panic state and juggle. I could calmly take one thing, move it to another day, get back on track, and still have the same calm, clarity, and focus without going into hysterical Kris mode. So you'll find, to your point, Hailey, that it's really freeing. It's your calendar, so you can do with it as you want. But what you'll find is getting stuff done and increasing your output and managing your energy, because people talk about time management. It's really energy management. I encourage you to give it a try, because you'll find it very exhilarating and you'll not feel trapped at all.
I'm with you on that. I am, but I've heard clients say, oh, but I want to be creative. I want to just do whatever, whenever. And I find that then when I do that, I don't ever get to do the thing I really want to do, because I feel like deadlines or other things that I have to do come up because I didn't plan properly,
And may I jump in there?
Yeah.
I think what will happen is you'll also find your rhythm. So when you put things on the calendar, so you know what, I'm like anybody else, I'm a flawed human being, and some things that get done, and I'm like, oh, so I had, let's say for a couple of Fridays, there's going to be writing content Friday afternoon. And I realized, you know what, by Friday afternoon, my energies are too high. I'm still trying to I'm excited about the weekends coming, what I accomplished in the week. So I just saw that I had moved that a couple of times and thought, guess what? Friday afternoon is not when I should be doing deep content type stuff. That's not it. That's more like a leftover thing in the afternoon. So to your point, when it's on the calendar and you want to have more freedom and be creative, you could start to see when those kick into your rhythm for the week. And this will allow you to move that stuff where you go, you know what, I'm flying high on Mondays. Mondays, I am more creative. I do a lot of video content. I do things that are more creative, and I just dive in. And so it will really help you manage the best parts of your personality, and you'll see the highs and the lows, kind of like eating. We all know, you might learn the hard way. Maybe I shouldn't have a large pizza right before I go to bed. You learn that. So you learn that about yourself in the calendar if you use it. If you don't use it, you don't learn anything.
Yeah. And being okay with it taking a little time to figure your calendar and yourself out. You're always going to be learning it, and not beating yourself up if you don't, get to it all or whatever, because you're not getting to it all right now, not using the calendar. So, you're not in a worse place. You're actually still getting better by practicing this.
100%. We're looking to improve the game. We're looking for, perfection does not create excellence.
Yeah, great point. So when you say win the hour, what do you mean? What's a winning hour? What do we think about when taking our day step by step?
Well, what I often talk about is it's not what you do with your day, it's what you do with your hour. And so it's kind of like some people say, hey, practice how you play, right? So it's like you think, I know back in the day when my business, what I call the dark years, when my business was new, and I used to hit Monday morning with a mighty to-do list in my hand, and the things I was going to achieve, you had no idea. And again, it wasn't until I started putting these to-do list items on my calendar, and I realized this is insanity. If you break this down into time and all this, I had like a week's worth of work on Monday, which then fell into Tuesday and fell into Wednesday. And I was like beating myself up, everything you properly diagnosed, Hailey. So what happened was, and I'm not talking about putting every little thing on your calendar, like I have to do this or laundry or call that. Like there's just a way to batch the work. But what happens is, if you are strategic about what you do with your hour, the day will take care of itself, right? That's where the power lies, is win the hour, and you can win the day, you can win the damn month, you can win the year. But rushing through that hour thinking looking at your day in clumps of, I just got to get a whole bunch of junk done, you must know by now it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So what about if somebody wants to take action on today's episode and they're like, you know what? You're right. I need to be better about my time and managing overwhelm. What would be a good place for them to start? What would be a good first step?
Well, there's a couple of things I just want to touch on that really do add to everything we're talking about. And then we'll give you some quick little tips. One is, understand at this point that you really truly can't do it all by yourself. That's really not having a business. That's being self-employed, and it's really painful to say the least, right? So often we think that whatever our zone of genius is, whatever service we provide, all of a sudden there's a little bit of pre and post work to those activities. And then we start to clump that together as something that we have to do, right? So you can get help. You can create what we call a WIN team, so you can get to what is next. That's what WIN stands for, what is next. And that's really about getting your ideas to execution as an entrepreneur. That's the name of the game. Repeating, getting caught up in the admin work, that's a job. You had it, you didn't like it. So, having a team, having some very basic systems and processes in play, which sound restrictive, but they're not. And the ones you used before that you didn't like in a job, that's because they were not written by the end user. They're static in nature, and they were just there to cover liability. So we're talking about a different thing when we talk about that now, or like our super toolkits in the winner's circle. But at the very least, what I would say, some basic things you can do is, first off, do the work that requires the most attention or focus first thing in the morning. That's where your brain power should be really fully charged. You want to be able to start the day refreshed and leave fresh. And you want to be mindful about decision fatigue, attention residue. When you're running around in all those different directions, you're really painfully depleting your battery. And so that you don't have the quality of work at 3:00 in the afternoon that you could if you did this differently. And another thing I talk to people about all the time, two little things, is one is about working backwards. So when I wrote my book, Win the Hour, Win the Day, one of the things I did was I realized that if I was going to have this book done in June to get to the editors, because if she didn't get it by June, she couldn't do it till September. So I looked and I said, okay, I have to do 5 pages Monday to Friday to get this to her by June. Now, and I did it first thing in the morning. So first thing in the morning, if something, I'd be like, okay, I have to make a choice not to do it. It wasn't something that slipped through the day and I was going to do it at 3 and 4 and then it gets dumped to tomorrow. So there were some days where I said, Hailey, you know what? I don't think I have this in me. I don't think I have 5 pages in me. And the old me would be like, you know what? Well, I'm just going to be so refreshed tomorrow because tonight I'm going to go to bed. Like I would have this big plan that tomorrow would be this magical day. I'd be taller, thinner, my hair would be better, and I would write better, right? And then what I realized in a sober moment is I don't have 5 pages in me today. I won't have 10 in me tomorrow. So get to it, Missy, right? But I wouldn't have saw that if I didn't work backwards and have it on my calendar first thing in the morning. And that's the only way. Otherwise, there's that horrible saying where you go to a graveyard and everybody in there has a book in them because it just slips through your hands, really like soap in the shower. So that's something you can do. Do the work that's most to you, whatever that work is, requires most attention or focus first thing in the morning, and work backwards on your projects and use your calendar.
Amazing. I love it. So where can everybody connect with you, find you, all that good stuff?
You know what? You can reach me on any of the socials, message me on LinkedIn, tell me that you heard me on this fantastic show. Any friend of Hailey's is a friend of mine, and we'll take you from there.
Awesome. Thank you again for coming, Kris. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.